Remember to remember to remember is what our beloved chaplain John Berger said at the 150th of the Naval Ammunition Depot. But what a privilege to have you here to tell your story.
I'm a survivor, but not Port Chicago, Pearl Harbor. And when I came back, they gave me a short job in 1943. I was stationed at San Bruno Mountain. We had a radio station up on the top of the hill. And one night, I heard this big explosion and felt the concussion, and it was Port Chicago blowing up. And I got a phone call from downtown, the district office, and they said, bring the remote truck, we gotta go to Port Chicago. And I said, where in the hell is Port Chicago? Went down, picked up a lieutenant, and we drove across the Oakland Bay Bridge and headed for Pittsburgh. And we finally found Port Chicago, parked in the middle of town. All the windows in the stores were shattered, and there was a Examiner reporter or somebody there, and he already had picked up a bottle of booze out of a liquor store window as he walked by and was telling me, see what I got? And I'm thinking, boy, these reporters could care less about telling a story. They want to know how to get some booze, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, I had a stringing antenna up from the truck. It was one of these airplane device type where it's on a reel, and I dragged it up long enough to go up into an apartment in town and go to the window and hang this antenna up so I could work the station. And as I opened the door of this apartment, I don't know why I was allowed to go there, but I opened the door and the linoleum on the floor was 2 feet up above the floor. The concussion had raised it up, and I had to step on it to walk over to the window. And at the window there was a little crib full of glass from the window that had broken, had fallen into the crib. Lucky there was nobody in the crib. And hung my antenna, went down, and then discovered I couldn't work my radio station in San Francisco, but I could work the Seattle station, who then sent whatever we sent back to San Francisco. Kind of funny, but it worked. And I talked to a second mate who had left the ship before the explosion and walked into town to phone his wife. He told me he's going to tell her that they were leaving the next morning, and so he wanted to phone her from downtown Port Chicago, and he's the only survivor from that group. And we had a 2-ton anchor that had been flung from the ship all the way into town. I never saw it, but they said it was a 2-ton ship's anchor from the, and there also was a locomotive that was moving the freight cars along the dock. They never found it. It evaporated from the explosion. To me, it was really something. Okay.
What was your memory of the Port Chicago disaster?
Oh, Port Chicago. I was standing up in my bedroom. My bedroom really originally was a sun porch, and so it had windows on 2 sides, and it almost threw me to the ground. And I'm so glad I wasn't, it didn't break our windows, but the concussion was terrible. And my mother and I, we had always discussed if there was ever a blast, we were to get under the piano. It was against the main wall in the living room. Almost every quarters had a piano. I sort of half jolted my way to the door and in and under that big heavy piano. And there my mother was too, and we waited for the next class. Now my father was, I don't know where in the house, but he was always very alert and immediately went to any problem. And so I can't even remember how he got there, but he did end up, he had a letter of commendation from Secretary Hull of the Navy for his help in the rescue at Port Chicago. He helped build it and knew where to turn off things and how to get around. And this was his souvenir he brought home. This is part of the ship that blew up. That is the steel from somewhere on that ship.
So what did everybody think when the blast first hit? Did they think
We thought it was on the, no, we thought it was on the ammunition depot itself, because we thought something of ammo had blown up there. No, not really. I think a couple of times there might have been sabotage on the island. I really do, but didn't think we would be able to.
How long was your father helping out at Port Chicago?
It was weeks, because he had to help rebuild, see about rebuilding things.
And he admired the Salvation Army?
Yes, yes. He came home saying the Salvation Army got there so quickly, and they didn't just bring coffee and donuts. They brought hot soup and then full meals, actually, to those that were there to help in the rescue. Because my father probably, I don't know how many hours he worked and how little sleep he got.
Just a week before that, one of the shops blew up. And that sounded almost the same here as the Port
That's
Chicago.
one of the things I was talking about. I remember the broken windows in that one.
Yeah.
I know Greg's got a dad who was a survivor. He didn't say much about it. We met you the first time last year. Greg, do you want to say a couple things? And he actually worked at Port Chicago himself.
Okay, I hope you can hear me. Yeah, I came last year because I was interested in what the program was going to be about, and I really did enjoy it. My dad was a survivor at Port Chicago, and ironically, I worked at Port Chicago in 1965 during the summer while I was going to college. And my dad and his friends that I knew that had served there actually never really talked about it at all. And even when I came home and was really excited about the summer job that I had working there loading ammunition, he didn't make any comment about it whatsoever, you know. But I did find out how difficult the work is and how demanding it was. But I did enjoy the time that I worked there. I even tried to work there while I went to school, but working nights and going to school days was pretty difficult because this was during the Vietnam War, and they were loading a lot of ammunition there. But I'm very proud of the men who did serve there in 1944, and including my dad. And as I said, he did not, and his friends did not talk about it, but I'm sure that they were proud of their service for their country. And I'm just a little shy about coming up and speaking about it because it's just something that I don't talk to very much about, except sometimes with my...
We recognize that we all stand on the shoulders of people who went before us.
Remember to remember to remember